The principle of humanity is the first of the 7 fundamental principles that guide the work of the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. The principle of humanity means that all humankind shall be treated humanely and equally in all circumstances by saving lives and alleviating suffering while ensuring respect of the individual. Hurricane Irma unleashed untold suffering on the residents of the BVI that will forever be etched on the memories of everyone who experienced it. During that time, the honorees demonstrated the principle of humanity in saving lives and alleviating suffering. We appreciate their service to the community. They were courageous in stepping out while others remained indoors. They went into overdrive while others were too shocked by the events to take action. We are pleased to recognize them for their service and bravery. We are indeed pleased that you are able to be here today to celebrate with them as they receive the accolades. None of them were thinking of being awarded when they were doing what they did. They just did what needed to be done. I say to them, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Mrs. Millie Jaspert, wife of Governor Jaspert and patron of the Red Cross, to address you.
Welcome. My husband, Governor Jaspert, and I are delighted to see you all. Honourable Premier and Mrs. Smith, Honourable Ronnie W. Skelton, Honourable Mark Vanderpool, Deputy Governor Mr. David Archer, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health and Social Development, Mrs. Petrona Smith-Davies, Director of Disaster Management, Mrs. Charlene Dabrio, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Matthews, Director of Public Prosecutions, Kim Hollis, Chief Fire Officer, Zebulon McLean, Chairman of the BVI Red Cross, Jeff Brooks, Director of the Red Cross, Helen Frett, all members and volunteers of the Red Cross, members of the media, and all honoured guests, their supporters, family and friends. We're really happy today to host this Red Cross award ceremony for the Red Cross medals for service and bravery. Nearly 10 months on from the hurricanes of last September, the events still stay with us all. And now is a good time to reflect on the amazing contribution that so many people within our territory made at that time. I'm honoured to be patron of the BVI Red Cross. And indeed, I first came across the organisation the morning following the storm, when the boys and I were here at the house, and Jeff Brooks and a team from the Red Cross appeared at that time, working hard. They were aware of someone who was trapped in a first-floor apartment and needed kidney dialysis. And at that point, just hours after the storm, here they were asking how they could get hold of police and fire to get support. I realised at that point what a critical part of a BVI support they were. Indeed, the Red Cross, I know, was absolutely vital in the emergency response following the hurricanes. And beyond that, in phase 2, the fabulous financial assistance program led by the Red Cross with financial support from many partners that reached over 1,000 households, 3,500 individuals that were 12% of the population of BVI, those in the greatest need. They were able to support them with their basic needs at this time. But I know that today the Red Cross team aren't just looking within their organisation at those who made an amazing contribution, but also looking wider to other people who really stood out in their actions at that difficult time. It must have been an incredibly difficult task for them to choose the people that stood out, because I know that throughout our communities there have been people who have made a huge difference. Even now, I know there are many people who are sheltering neighbours in their own homes and continuing to make a massive difference on an individual basis. But just because we can't thank everyone, the hundreds, the thousands who made a big difference at that time, we shouldn't pick out the few who really stood out And I know the Red Cross have thought long and hard about who should receive these, and like all of us, know that there are many others as well who need to be thanked. So I look forward to this ceremony, to seeing who has been chosen today, and let us all also thank for the many others who have also made a great difference in these difficult 10 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jaspert. I now invite Mr. Troy Christopher, member of the Board of Directors of the BVI Red Cross, to bring reflections.
I'd like to acknowledge the protocol already established. The Oxford Dictionary defines courage as the ability to do something dangerous or to face pain or opposition without showing fear. Likewise, bravery is defined as a courageous behavior or character. In September 2017, the British Virgin Islands were devastated by both hurricanes Irma and Maria. The devastation and carnage which those hurricanes inflicted on all islands damaged property, displaced families, and forever changed the territory as we knew it. However, through the despair and hardships of personal loss and uncertainty, the people of the British Virgin Islands rose to the occasion and persevered. The Board of Directors of the British Virgin Islands Red Cross takes this opportunity to salute those heroes that displayed great bravery, courage, and love of country before themselves. To symbolize all gratitude and appreciation to those 25 exceptional individuals who made the resolve in their hearts and minds to cast aside their personal and private avocations, to stay behind, serve their country, and answer the call at one of our country's darkest hours, we honor those heroes with awarding them with the British Virgin Islands Red Cross Medal. It is our hope that the recognition of these 25 brave and courageous souls will surely reflect positivity and honor on their families, communities, and organizations to which they belong. The citation on the back of the medal reads as follows. And it reads, "For dedicated service, courage, and bravery displayed during the crisis caused by hurricanes Irma and Maria, September 2017. Thank you.
We're now going to have the distribution of medals, and I invite Governor Jaspert to come forward as I read the citations. First, we have Major Tom Lilamon of the Royal Engineers. Hurricane Irma hit the BVI on Wednesday. On Thursday, his commanding officer in England asked Major Tom if he would volunteer to come to the BVI and open the airport. He was warned that Hurricane Jose was approaching and his safety would not be guaranteed. He called his wife and asked for permission to go and was on the RAF aircraft that evening. He reached Barbados on Friday night, and at 8:30 a.m., he, a brigadier, and 4 engineers landed at Beef Island in a small military jet. 2.5 hours later, the first 2 A400 Hercules aircraft landed, bringing 120 Marine commandos to restore order to the territory. Major Tom had to use a car battery to power a radio so that 2 air traffic controllers could guide the planes in. His mission accomplished, he could have returned home, but instead he asked permission to stay. And as you can see, he's still with us, helping our long road to recovery. Miss Maureen Frizam. Ms. Fraser was the volunteer disaster manager at the Red Cross who spearheaded the disaster response efforts. She and a team of 3 volunteers were the first persons on the road after the storm. She drove the Land Rover, the only vehicle that could traverse the roads right after the storm. She assisted persons to the hospital and to shelters and provided first aid to the injured. Miss Anthea Smith is not here with us today, but I'll still read her citation. She was the leader of the first responders who left her family and stayed at the Red Cross headquarters to be readily available to respond to the needs of the vulnerable in the community. She assisted in the rescue of an injured woman who fell from a 2-story building. Miss Denise Gardner. Former office manager of the Red Cross, she had a long history with the Red Cross and was a valuable member of the team. She was familiar with the workings of the Red Cross and could provide necessary information to the team. She assisted with first aid and rescue efforts in the community and also assisted with shelter assessments. Miss Lynette Stevens. A member of the first responders team who had many roles. Her notable responsibility was in shelter assessment. Right after the hurricane, she made daily rounds at shelters, assessing needs and taking much needed supplies to the shelters. Thereafter, she conducted weekly assessments of official and unofficial shelters until February 2018. She stayed at the Red Cross headquarters to ensure that there was always a presence at the building when other volunteers were out in the field. She organized the distribution of clothing for persons in need. Mr. Karan Posada. A youth volunteer who made himself available even before the hurricane. He started assisting in the emergency shelter at the St. George's Church, then came to the Red Cross to continue his volunteer work. He assisted with shelter assessments, kept the generator running, and stepped up to the plate in carrying out any task that we required of him. Miss Yolande Baisden. Ms. Byers then managed the emergency shelter at the New Testament Church for 2 weeks. She then relocated to Red Cross, where she played a key role in relief and clothing distribution. Ms. Rashoma Lyons. As a community emergency response team member and Red Cross first responder, she managed the emergency shelter at St. George's Church and the multipurpose shelter. Her untiring dedication was remarkable. She remained in the shelter for 3 months and took on tasks beyond the scope of her responsibilities. Mr. Jeffrey Brooks. Mr. Brooks represented the BVI Red Cross at the NEOC. He assisted in the evacuation of the DDM building, and he braved the fury of the second half of the storm to help escort a wounded member of DDM to the hospital. He went on to serve as a driver, carrying medical supplies and patients between hospital and shelters. Miss Astrid Wensky is not on island. She is in Germany and she's not well, so please keep her in your prayers. But Astrid represented the Red Cross at the hospital, caring for and organizing victims of the storm who had taken shelter there. Honorable Mark Vanderpool. When the personnel of the NEOC evacuated the DDM building during the Eye of Irma, they found themselves trapped by debris in the parking lot. Mr. Vanderpool, who lived above DDM, saw their plight and immediately took action. He assessed the situation, improvised, and led 22 people to safety in his basement apartment. Before the night was over, there were some 38 persons sheltering there. At 5:30 a.m., before first light, he was off on foot, ready to get to work on our recovery. From his business, he donated food and other much-needed items to the shelters. Mr. Alex Jeffrey. DDM staff member. He climbed the roof of the building in the beginning of the storm in an attempt to fix the communication antenna, which had been blown down. He assisted in the orderly evacuation of the NEOC and was then wounded by flying metal and had to brave the second half of the storm, being escorted to the emergency room on foot to the hospital. After receiving stitches in his chest and checking on the safety of his family, he was right back on the job. He also managed the logistics of the relief items coming into the country. Fire Officer Melvin Jeffers. A member of the NEOC, he provided assistance in the orderly evacuation of the DDM building. When one of the DDM staff was wounded, he led him and a Red Cross volunteer in a harrowing trip to the hospital. Braving the second half of Irma, with winds repeatedly knocking them to the ground and debris flying everywhere, it was his strength and stamina that brought them safely to the hospital.
Good man, good man.
Yes, Mr. McLean. Ms. Delma Maduro and Mr. Elvis Harrigan of the Rotary Club, and Delma will be represented by her son, Chad. Following the immediate aftermath of the August 3rd floods and right after Irma and Maria, all those other tropical storms and rain events, Delma and Elvis were on the job. They stepped up to the plate and kept delivering. They were involved in cleanup, relief supplies, shelter management, you name it, and they were there, tirelessly serving the needs of the community. Sergio Dantas of Visa will be represented by Mr. Phil Aspinall. Sergio provided emergency transport between all of our sister islands, bringing food, water, and personnel to assist in Jos Van Dyke, Anegada, and Virgin Gorda. There was hardly an island he didn't touch or request for help that he didn't answer. Sergeant Steve George of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. Sergeant George, orderly to the governor, stayed on the job for 20 days straight during and after Irma, working 24/7 to ensure the safety of the governor and his family. He slept on the bare floor. He assisted in boarding up windows and making temporary repairs when not escorting the governor. Mr. Vincent Whitley. Mr. Whitley went to work on Virgin Gorda the morning after the storm. With no communication to the outside world, he organized a committee to begin recovery, which became the VG Rock. Together, they created food distribution stations, they organized shelters, and they began their cleanup operations. Miss Christine Yates. Ms. Yates provided food, building supplies, and shelter to over 40 persons in Virgin Gorda. Working with the VG Rock Committee, she spearheaded the restoration of power and continues up to this day to provide relief and to assist in the recovery efforts in Virgin Gorda. Fire Officer L. Nathan White. Officer White is stationed in Anegada, and he went out ahead of the storm to ensure that the elderly and the most vulnerable persons were prepared in their homes. During and after, he made sure generators were operating in a safe manner, and he continued to assist the needy and support the shelters with the shelter which was established at the school. Ms. Shirley Vanderpool. Ms. Vanderpool is a government representative on Anegada, and she led preparations ahead and relief efforts after the storm. She coordinated supplies and distributions being brought in by the UK military, Visa, and private individuals from St. Thomas and Puerto Rico. Ms. Carmen Blyden, Mrs. Carmen Blyden. Mrs. Blyden is a representative for the Deputy Governor's Office in Jos Van Dyke, and she led the recovery effort on that island. She organized the relief supplies and established a food bank and distribution center. Her dedicated, tireless work brought order from chaos, which provided much needed relief to the most vulnerable. Mr. Anthony McMaster, PS in the Ministry of Communication and Works, is going to be represented by his daughter Kadia, and Mr. Jeremy Hodge, Assistant Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Communication and Works. Working as a team, Anthony and Jeremy hit the ground running after Irma. They faced the overwhelming task of assessing the damage to our infrastructure, roads, buildings, sewage, and leading the recovery efforts to repair them. With no communication or transport, they spent the first few days traveling on foot and reporting back to the NEOC. Ignoring the damage to their own homes, they stayed on the job and led by example. Mr. Henry Cricky. Yeah. Deputy Managing Director of the BVI Electricity Corporation. He was faced with the loss of over 90% of our utility poles and almost complete destruction of our electric grid. A tireless worker and an outstanding leader, Henry approached his task with the same calm determination and resolve, which has always been his hallmark. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you, Governor. I now call on Honorable Ronnie Skelton to bring remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson Ellen Fred, Chairperson of the BVI Red Cross. And I also want to recognize Ms. Idris O'Neill, the past chairman of the BVI Red Cross. Governor Jaspert and Mrs. Jaspert, Premier and Mrs. Smith, Honorable Mark Vanderpool, PS, Ministry of Health and Social Development, the staff of the Hurricanes, Shirley and Dabio, Director of Public Prosecution, the Commissioner of Police, the Chief Fire Officer, volunteers, good job. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good morning. Good morning. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you all here today on such an occasion as this, where we honor the hard-working men and women that showcase selfless and brave acts that benefit people of these Virgin Islands. I want to commend the 25 volunteers who have been honored here this morning for proving that anyone, regardless of their background, can see the bigger picture and realize the need to lend a helping hand to those in need and to rebuild our territory. Last year was one of the toughest years we all faced, post-Hurricane Irma and Maria. At some point, time seems to have stopped. We opened our doors on September 7th to behold what can only be described as a scene right out of a movie. But here we are today, with over 1,000 people, and I heard Ms. Jasper say 3,500 people who have benefited from the financial assistance, food, water, clothing, supplies, all the thanks to the collaborative efforts of the BVI Red Cross. And its volunteers. So I would like to say on behalf of the people of the territory and with the Premier's permission, the government of the Virgin Islands, to thank you all for what you have done and what you will continue to do for our territory and our people. The hurricane season is upon us once again, and it's important for us to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I don't think God sends hurricane. But let us prepare for the worst and hope for the best. May Jehovah continue to bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Skelton, for your brief remarks. I do see that the program was short, so we're not keeping you too long. We know it's a working day, and everybody has a busy day, so we just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Governor and Mrs. Jaspert for hosting this ceremony. I give thanks to the government office staff, governor's office staff, and the staff at the governor's house here. And also, we want to thank Mr. Brooks, who took on the organizing of this ceremony, along with the staff at the government house. I thank Mrs. Jaspert for her remarks and for her words of encouragement. I would like to say special thanks to Mr. Troy Christopher for bringing reflections. Thank you, Governor Jaspert, for distributing the medals. Honorable Skelton, we want to thank you for your remarks and for your words of encouragement and letting us know that you appreciate the work that we are doing. I also want to thank all of you for taking the time out to be here with us. I thank the media for coming out as well and getting the story out to the public. And for all those who played a part in the ceremony, I say thank you. Those who played a role behind the scenes and those who are here in this room. I thank all the honorees for their dedication and service during Irma, during and after Irma, and for all that you continue to do for your community. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody again for being here today. Just to add my absolute admiration and gratitude to all of the heroes who we've recognised, or the Red Cross has recognised today. It is truly humbling, and thank you and well done. I have two more, which I've been asked by the Red Cross to read a citation out. As you'll see, there are 2 medals left unclaimed there. That's because these 2 have difficulties moving through the doors. I'm going to keep you in suspense as to who those 2 are. So this is a little bit unusual, and I am doing it on good advice from the Red Cross, and we're not sure if it's been done before. But if 2 vehicles ever deserve to be honoured with a citation, it is 2 veteran defenders of the BVI Red Cross. Known affectionately as the Ambulance and Puma, they performed yeoman duty throughout the crisis caused by these storms. For the first few days, they were some of the only vehicles that could traverse the debris-strewn and flooded roads. They were out rescuing victims of Irma while the storm was still raging. Indeed, actually, as I walked down from here to People's Hospital, it was the Red Cross, one of the Red Cross Land Rovers, was the first vehicle I saw. In the days and weeks that followed, they were seen everywhere, bringing patients to and from the hospital, carrying much-needed medical supplies from the airport to the hospital and shelters. They even made it to Jos van Dijk on a barge to distribute relief supplies to that battered island. And during this trying time, they brought more than just material relief. Their presence in the community brought hope to everyone when we were all dazed and beat up from the impact of the worst storms in Atlantic history. So I'm honoured to present to the Ambulance and to Puma a citation for dedicated service, outstanding dependability, and courage and bravery. So in this unusual part of the ceremony, I'm now going to ask my wife, the patron of the Red Cross, and Theodore Burke of Burke's Garage, as the representative of Land Rover, to come and join us all as they place a ribbon on the 2 of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambulance. You did a great job. Thank you for helping all those people.
And this week, we continue to provide valuable service to the people of this territory.